Hello from the cradle of Liberty, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is Steve McKnight, and this is another episode of the Liberty Brawler podcast with Steve McKnight. I'm excited about tonight's show. We're going to talk about Project Dragonfly, the possibility of Rod Rosenstein committing sedition, and the White House is considering an antitrust investigation into online platform bias at Google and Facebook. Now first into Project Dragonfly. If you're not familiar with Project Dragonfly, The Intercept broke a story last month that Google was working with the Chinese government to create a search engine that would link your cell phone number to your searches. And it goes in compliance with China's very strict censorship laws. I don't know if you're aware of it, but in China they actually have social credits to do things. And Google has agreed to go ahead and work with them. Now, The Intercept, which originally broke the story about Project Dragonfly, is saying that Google execs are actually trying to get rid of a confidential memo that's been circulating. The Dragonfly memo reveals that a prototype of the censored search engine was being developed as an app for both Android and iOS devices and would force users to sign in so they could use the service. The memo confirms, as The Intercept first reported last week, that user searches would be associated with their personal phone number. So essentially, the Chinese government is using spy tools on its own citizens to take a look into what they're doing. Now, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is, thank goodness I'm an American, because we don't do that here. But this is a US-based company that is complying to spy on citizens overseas. What's to keep these companies like Google from spying on us and not telling us? Now, of course, there's always, well, the government will be there to protect you, but I think that's a blow to malarkey, because at the end of the day, what really matters is who's got the money and who's got the power. And right now, Google has both. Don't forget that the Chinese government has faced constant criticism from international human rights organizations and advocates for years over their censorship policy. Chinese authorities have targeted and imprisoned individuals who have spoken out against government policies and in favor of freedom of expression. Google has not yet mentioned any plan to prevent their platform from being used to target political dissidents. But you have to conjecture, or at least theorize, that if you're a political dissident and you're in China and the next thing you know, you're looking up something that the Chinese government doesn't want the public to know because you're a political dissident, there's a very good chance that you could go to jail, and this is all courtesy of a US-based company called Google. Now, I understand that currently Project Dragonfly is not something that's happening right now, but what I'm trying to do is to raise awareness and also get people like you to go out and start talking about this. Write letters to the newspaper, write letters to politicians, write letters to Google, and be like, we do not want this to be done because this is an un-American way for an American business to act. Now on to Rod Rosenstein. In a blockbuster story on Friday's New York Times, Adam Goldman and Michael S. Schmidt reported that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein suggested covertly recording President Trump's conversations in 2017. According to the story, Rosenstein also suggested that people at the FBI interviewing with Trump to be the Bureau's director could also record him. Of course, Trump needed a new FBI director after firing James Comey on May 9th. Rosenstein reportedly made his suggestions in 2 meetings while behaving erratically in the following days, which the story calls disorienting. The story also reports that Rosenstein discussed invoking the 25th Amendment, which could have the cabinet remove Trump from office. Now, I don't know about you. I am absolutely surprised about what's going on with Rosenstein. I can't believe that he would actually be silly enough to think that he could get rid of a president just by wiretapping him. Stepping back from that and just looking at this, it is weird and odd. I've never heard of a deputy attorney general trying to commit sedition against an acting president. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of curious on where all this hatred is coming from. And I know this sounds like it might be a conspiracy theory, and Alex Jones should be on my show, and I should be wearing a tinfoil hat. But this is sounding more like Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is a member of the deep state and he does not want Trump to do well. More importantly, he is a member of the deep state and he probably wants Trump out because it's bad for his business of not actually doing anything with money they take from me and you and call it taxes, but in reality it's theft. So what does this really mean for the Trump administration, and what does this really mean for the MAGA folk? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I am not a MAGA folk. I am not a big Trump guy. I'm a libertarian. I voted for Gary Johnson. I have my own views, just like those Republicans and conservatives who support Trump have their own views. And the other people, too. There are other people beyond the Republican Party that support Trump. In my opinion, he's got to act quick and figure out, 1, why Rod Rosenstein wanted to wiretap him, 2, where he was going to get the wiretap, 3, who is going to assist in helping him get the wiretap, and 4, who exactly he was going to report the information he got to, and 5, if he was exactly going to go ahead and leak it to the press. Now, I understand that there's concerns about what he could have been and who he was conspiring with under 18 USC 2384, which would basically involve a pretty hefty fine, most likely, and up to 20 years in prison, which is a really big deal for someone like Rod Rosenstein. Unfortunately, it is my belief that Rosenstein is guilty of trying to wiretap him, and I don't believe the New York Times is making this story up. So that essentially brings us back to the point, was Rod Rosenstein a member of the deep state, and was the deep state trying to get rid of Trump? And now on to our final story of the day. Business Insider has obtained a copy of a proposed executive order for President Trump that would ask federal law enforcement to thoroughly investigate whether any online platform has acted in violation of the antitrust laws to protect competition among platforms and address the online platform bias. This is because Trump has previously said social media is totally discriminating against Republican and conservative voices. Trump has also stated that Google discriminated against the State of the Union address. The White House has sought to distance itself from the draft text. A spokeswoman said Saturday that this document is not the result of an official policy process. Now, I don't know about you, but as soon as I hear that the government's thinking about doing weird investigations that aren't really being released to the public, especially in regards to platform bias, I'm wondering how much partisan politics plays into this. The reason I'm bringing up partisan politics isn't because I'm trying to bash Trump. I'm simply trying to say that political warfare has gotten to the point where you have people like Kavanaugh's wife being scared to sit in her own house, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders needing Secret Service protection. So really, what I think is really breaking out of all this investigation is how paranoid both the Republicans and Democrats are making each other, and how much they're almost getting to that level of pseudo-McCarthyism of trying to go after each other and break each other down. Now, I know this isn't exactly about what's going on, but look at the Kavanaugh sexual allegation. Kavanaugh looked like he was going to become the Supreme Court nominee, and then all of a sudden this allegation comes out from Miss Ford, and she's saying that he sexually assaulted her 36 years ago. Now, I don't know about you, but could it be that these political forces are actually going this low just to see who can be in power so that they can do stuff like investigate Facebook and Google to find out whether they like conservative voices or do not like conservative voices? Now, I understand that a lot of people are going to say, look, you shouldn't be biased. But this is the private sector, and they should be free to do as they please. And I'm not saying this to be against Trump. I'm saying that the free market will determine if companies like Google can survive censoring unjustly free speech. In that situation, do you really think the American people are going to keep with places like Facebook if they're going to go ahead and look up every little thing that you've ever done to determine whether you're too conservative for them? Also, it's interesting to me that right now they'd be going after it from the angle of antitrust laws. Because to be honest, Facebook and Google, as big as they are, as powerful as they are, as much money as they haven't really been flexing their money to push away smaller people, there really were no smaller guys available. I mean, sure, there's DuckDuckGo in comparison to Google, and MySpace in comparison to Facebook, but Google and Facebook are far superior to most of the companies that try to compete with them, and they really have worked on getting to the top level stuff. I'm surprised, to be honest, that they're not going after Apple too, because Apple's about to hit $1 trillion in net worth. But that's going away from the subject. What I think is really important, and what I really want to bring home, though, is if the White House is going to investigate a private company because they're concerned about their online bias, where is the actual evidence that they have been systematically censoring on purpose simply because they're left or right on their social media platforms? And more importantly, where is the evidence of Facebook and Google going after these politicians the way the politicians on the right are going after them? Well, that's all the time I have for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is Steve McKnight, signing off from the Cradle of Liberty, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.